This is probably the most misunderstood, misused piece of equipment in the whole of the shrimp keeping hobby. This is a TDS pen or a TDS meter, and I think it's probably responsible for more shrimp deaths than any other piece of equipment. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't use a TDS pen. I'm saying the vast majority of people not only don't know how to use them, but are misusing. They're using them incorrectly. And that incorrect use is leading to them carrying out unnecessary maintenance, unnecessary water changes, disrupting the balance of their shrimp tank and probably leading to the deaths of their shrimp. Let's start this video by discussing what a TDS pen is and how it works. And then I'll demonstrate why so many of you are using it wrong and show you the right way to use one. So a TDS pen or a TDS meter is a small handheld device which has essentially two small probes in there. And when you put it into your aquarium and press the button, a very small electrical charge is sent between the two probes. Now, when the probe is in the water and you press the button, there will be an amount of resistance between the two probes. And the greater the level of resistance, the greater the number of dissolved solids in your shrimp water. Unfortunately, so many people are under the impression that TDS is the same as hardness, and it's just not. They're two different readings. The hardness of your water, the general hardness, the GH, is a measure of the amount of calcium and magnesium dissolved in your water. And GH is really important for Neocaridina shrimp, and it's fairly important for Caridina shrimp. It helps our shrimp to molt. It helps them to build strong exoskeletons and to have a healthy molt. If the GH, or the general hardness of our shrimp tanks, is too low, we can see molting issues, which leads to the death of our shrimp. But TDS is not the same as GH. It's not the same as general hardness. Yes, your TDS pen will measure the calcium and magnesium in your water, but it also measures sodium and potassium and chloride and sulfates and bicarbonates and nitrates and phosphates. It will measure dissolved plant tannins. It will measure humic and fulvic acids. It will measure dissolved organic waste. It also measures iron and copper and zinc and manganese. It will measure silicates, ammonia and ammonium. And it can also pick up residual medications or treatments like dechlorinator or even plant fertilizer. At the end of the day, TDS stands for total dissolved solids. It doesn't stand for the hardness of your water. Now, when you talk to hobbyists, pretty much everybody has their own idea of what the right TDS is for cherry shrimp. Should it be 150, 250, 450? Well, if you take your TDS pen and you measure your water and you find you've got a TDS of 300, fabulous, I've got perfect shrimp water. But what if all 300 is coming from iron or copper? What if you've got no calcium, no magnesium dissolved in your water, no hardness whatsoever, but your TDS pen reads 300 because you've got lots of iron, lots of copper? What if it's measuring that because you've just added fertilizer to your tank? You've added some fertilizer, you've tested the water, and your TDS is super high. You go into panic mode. Oh no, my shrimp are going to die. It's 800. This is a disaster. It may well be 800, but it could be 800 because you've just put fertilizer in. It could be 800 because you're treating the shrimp with medication. It could be 800 because you've just added dechlorinator because you've done a water change. I'm going to do a super quick demonstration for you. I'm going to take this pot here and I'm going to take a scoop of water out of this cherry shrimp tank. Now, I'll pop it down here where you can't see it, but if I get my TDS pen now and I put it in that tank, in that pot, that reads 439. It's got a TDS of 439. Well, the internet will tell you, oh, it should be 150 to 250, should be 300 max. Well, 439, and please, I hope these guys don't have access to the internet, because if they find out their TDS is too high, they're going to be livid. Now, let's imagine I'm not testing a pot of water, I'm testing that tank, but I have just done a water change and I add a small amount of dechlorinator. In this syringe here, I've got some Chem Prime. I've added a couple of drops. I'll give that a stir. And now when I take my TDS pen and I measure the TDS, it's gone up to 546, but I've only added a couple of drops of dechlorinator. And you know what? It doesn't matter. The shrimp aren't going to care. Let's imagine that it's fertilizer day for my shrimp tank and I've got some Tropica premium nutrition here. And if I add just a couple of drops to that, hardly any at all, and again, I give it my very technical, non-scientific stir, and I put the TDS pen in there. Now we've got a TDS of 625. And you know what? It doesn't matter. It's 625 because I've added dechlorinator and I've added fertilizer. It's not 625 because the level of magnesium and calcium has shot up so high, it's going to harm my shrimp. Taking a TDS pen like this and just randomly shoving it in your tanks and going, 200, 300, 400, 300, 400. It doesn't tell you anything. All it tells you is there's 400 of something dissolved in that tank. There you can see there, we've got 625 somethings dissolved in that small pot of water. Now, TDS pens do have their place in the hobby. There are at least 2 useful scenarios when a TDS pen will help. The first of these is if you use it as a tool to monitor your water over time. Now, if you use something like the Shrimp Keeper's Journal, which I created for shrimp keepers to help them keep a track of parameters in their tank. Let's say you're using a book like the Shrimp Keeper's Journal, and over on the side here, when you're doing your weekly checks, your weekly tests, you're recording the TDS and you say, well, it's 350. And then next week you do your tests and it's 360. And the next week it's 320. And then suddenly the next week it's 800. Now you know something has changed. You don't know what's changed. You know your TDS has gone up, but you don't know if that's for good reasons or bad reasons. But now you can say, okay, well, I need to grab my test strips. Let me get the test strips, or let me get the API master test kit. Let me check the ammonia. Let me check the nitrites and the nitrates. Okay, it's none of those. Let me have a think. Have I done a thing? I didn't add fertilizer. I haven't done a water change. You can start to work through and find out the cause of the problem. That's why keeping track of your parameters is so helpful, because you can look back and go, 500, that seems high. What was it last week? What was it 2 weeks ago? And you've got it all written down. That's a great little tool. I'll put a link to that in the description below. That is a scenario where a TDS pen is really helpful. You can't look at your tank and go, my TDS seems to have risen. You need to use the pen to find out. Great use. But it does not tell you that your GH has gone up and your shrimp are suddenly all going to die and you need to go into panic mode. The other time a TDS pen is really useful, in fact, damn near imperative, is if you use RO, or reverse osmosis water. And RO water is essentially pure water. Everything has been stripped out and it's totally pure water. But that's no good for our shrimp. You need to remineralize that water to a certain point to make it suitable for typically your Caridina or possibly your Neocaridina shrimp. Now, in this scenario, your RO water has a TDS of nothing or very, very close to nothing. And then you'll add a number of scoops of salts. You'll mix it all up, and then you can use your TDS pen to check it. TDS is 300. Now, that's fine because you know what that TDS is made up of because you put it in there. It isn't out of the tap. It isn't chlorine or copper or iron or phosphates or any of that because it's RO water. And in that situation, a TDS pen is absolutely essential. I don't know why I looked at my fingers because I put it down. I was literally looking at nothing there. In that scenario, a TDS pen is a fabulous tool. TDS pens have their place in the hobby, and they may well indicate you need to do a water change, but they might not. Just because your TDS goes up doesn't mean you have to do a water change. But it's really important you do know when to do a water change. So the best thing you can do is watch this video next. Thanks for watching.